Hello and welcome to this video about the Burgundians. Have you ever heard the Dutch expression leven zoals een Bourgondier, or living like a Burgundian? It means that someone enjoys life and likes getting cozy with more than enough food and drinks. By using the word Burgundian, we refer to a dynasty of dukes that originated in Central Eastern France in the 14th century and continued to go strong in the 15th century. The court of these Burgundian dukes was known for its great wealth and mind-blowing feasts with an abundance of food and drinks. During the 14th and 15th centuries, the Dukes of Burgundy also acquired most lands in the present-day Benelux. Hence, to this day, people in certain areas of the Low Countries are still called Burgundians for their pleasure-seeking eating and drinking habits. For us, people from Flanders or Belgium, the Dukes of Burgundy have special importance because they united the Low Countries by obtaining the different small counties and duchies such as Flanders, Brabant, Limburg, etc., one by one, mostly in a peaceful manner. Thus, they should be considered as our founding fathers. Thanks to them, the Low Countries became a political unit that is separate from France and Germany. Without the Burgundians, Belgium and the Netherlands would not exist today as distinct states, independent from France and Germany. Obviously, this was quite an accomplishment. Let's now delve into the story of the Burgundians. In 1361, the last duke of the old dynasty had died of the plague. He didn't have any heirs. Now, when a duke dies without heirs, the duchy goes back to the king. Thus, Burgundy went back to the French throne, then occupied by King John the Good. At the time, France was involved in the 100 Years' War against England. In 1356, the English and the French armies did battle near the French city of Poitiers. The English army had positioned itself on an easily defendable hill. The French king could have decided to surround the hill and let the English die of hunger, but John the Good still believed in the ideals of chivalry and was afraid of being called a coward. He therefore sent his soldiers up the hill. Unsurprisingly, the French started losing the uphill battle soon enough. Many French soldiers decided to flee, abandoning their king. But John's youngest son, Philip, remained at his side. Philip helped his father by shouting directions, warning against approaching English enemies. Beware, father, to the left! Beware, father, to the right! As a reward for Philip's courage or boldness in remaining by the king's side in the Battle of Poitiers, King John the Good gave the Duchy of Burgundy as a gift to his youngest son Philip, now called the Bold. Philip the Bold also became the number 2 in the kingdom, thus enabling him to use French funds for Burgundian feasts. In 1369, Philip the Bold married with Margaret of Male, the daughter and only heiress of the Count of Flanders, Louis of Male. After the death of Count Louis of Male in 1384, Philip inherited the wealthy county of Flanders by virtue of his marriage to Margaret. Inheriting Flanders was significant, since Flanders was famous as one of Europe's economic powerhouses. Flanders included rich cities like Bruges, often likened to the Venice of the north. Another opportunity for Philip the Bold presented itself in 1380, with the ascent to the French throne of Charles VI. He was later nicknamed the Mad, because he became mentally ill in 1392. This forced Philip the Bold to step in as regent. Using the great power of regency over France, Philip redirected French taxpayer money towards Burgundy and Flanders, further boosting their wealth. But not everyone was happy with this situation. Louis of Orléans, brother to the troubled king, disliked the Burgundian hold on French power. This would spark a brutal power struggle amidst the French court. In 1404, Philip the Bold died and was succeeded as duke by his son, John the Fearless. The power struggle between the Burgundians and Louis of Orleans continued under John's rule, and it even intensified. John the Fearless was more ruthless, less diplomatic, and more military-minded than his father. In 1407, Louis of Orleans was murdered in Paris. John the Fearless had given the order to kill him. 12 years after the murder of Louis of Orleans, the French crown prince, the later Charles VII, wanted to reconcile with John the Fearless, or at least seemingly so. In 1419, they met in person on the bridge of Montereau, some 70 kilometers southeast of Paris. Although this happened in the context of peace negotiations, John the Fearless heard the words "Tuez! Tuez!" when he knelt before the French crown prince, and his face was struck with a sword. The French had betrayed the Burgundians. When the new Duke of Burgundy, Philip the Good, heard of the murder of his father, he was traumatized. Philip's anger at the French and his thirst for revenge would turn out to be a game changer in two regards. First, Burgundy started openly supporting the English against the French, which would leave Anglo-Burgundian troops in control of more than 1/3 of France. Eventually, the French king Charles VII was forced to seek peace with Duke Philip the Good on terms that were favorable to the Burgundian side. The new peace treaty between France and Burgundy stated that Philip was no longer bound by feudal duties to the French crown. In other words, he no longer owed the loyalty that a duke normally owes to his king. One could argue that this meant that all of Philip's lands in Burgundy and the Netherlands attained a sort of independence from France. Second, Philip the Good didn't want to get involved in French politics anymore, or at least not as much as his father and grandfather. The time, energy, and resources that would otherwise have gone to France could now be invested in the Netherlands. Through inheritance, marriage, alliance, and purchase, Philip the Good accomplished an impressive expansion of his territories in the Netherlands. In 1429 he acquired Namur, in 1430 he acquired Brabant and Limburg, and in 1433 he acquired Holland, Zeeland, and Hainaut. And in 1451 he acquired Luxembourg. Philip the Good also started the process of the unification of these different counties and duchies by establishing the first States General of the Low Countries. The States General consisted of the representatives of the nobility, clergy, and towns from the various regions. The first meeting of these States General of the Netherlands took place in Bruges in 1464, and it contributed to a sense of unity. Hence, Philip the Good was later credited with the title in Latin Conditor Belgii, that is, founder and unifier of the Low Countries. In 1430, Philip married to Isabella of Portugal, who 3 years later would give birth to his son and heir, Charles the Bold. His marriage to Isabella was reason enough for Philip to throw the party of the century. And now I'll give a quote from Bart van Loo's masterpiece, The Burgundians. Isabella didn't know where to look first. Red and white wine spouted from the hoofs of a lion. A stag pissed spiced wine in an endless stream. A squirrel held up a jug from which rose water flowed. The biggest surprise was a blue ram, who cleared a path out of an immense pie with his gilded horns. And look, there was someone sitting atop a roasted pig. Further on was a stuffed wild boar who would defecate radishes when you tugged on its curly tail. Thus far the quote from The Burgundians, Bart van Loo. Philip's marriage to Isabella was also the occasion for the foundation of the Order of the Golden Fleece, an exclusive group of knights. For Philip, the order was primarily a means to bind the elite through him, through prestige and honor, but it was also a provocation to France and England. Large chivalric orders, led by rulers, had only existed in those two kingdoms before. By establishing an order of knights himself, the Burgundian duke placed himself on equal footing with the French and English kings. 2 years after the foundation of the Order of the Golden Fleece, Philip the Good was present at the unveiling of the Ghent altarpiece, an enormous, magnificent painting by the brothers Hubert and Jan van Eyck. At the center of the painting is the Lamb of God, symbolizing Christ the Redeemer. At the time, the lamb was also seen as a reference to the newly founded Order of the Golden Fleece. Jan van Eyck was perhaps the most famous painter in Europe during his lifetime, because of his refined oil painting technique and his realistic depiction of reality. From 1425 onwards, Jan van Eyck worked as a court painter in the service of Philip the Good. We therefore owe a large part of his paintings to the financial support of the Burgundian duke. Philip died in 1467 and was succeeded as duke by his son, Charles the Bold. In order to link his northern territories in the Low Countries with his southern territories in Burgundy, Charles wanted to conquer the Duchy of Lorraine. But Lorraine was not alone. It received support from the Swiss. This anti-Burgundian coalition would prove fatal for the over-ambitious duke. During the siege of Nancy in 1477, Charles not only lost the battle against the coalition, but was also killed on the battlefield himself. Only 48 hours after the battle, Charles's naked dead body was found, covered by snow and bitten by wolves. Charles had only left one child, a daughter, Mary of Burgundy. She was now in charge, and she had a lot on her plate, because soon after the death of Charles the Bold, the French king took advantage of the situation by invading the Duchy of Burgundy. Luckily, Mary had made a strategic choice of marriage. In 1477, she married Maximilian of Habsburg, an Austrian ruler who would soon become German emperor. Maximilian's troops effortlessly kicked the French out of the Low Countries in 1479, thus leaving Mary of Burgundy back in control. In general, she was a popular ruler, which is why her untimely death in a riding accident in 1482 caused much sadness among the Flemish population at the time. Thus, from 1482 onwards, the Low Countries would be ruled by the Habsburg dynasty. That was it, and thank you for listening.